Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Today, we'll be digging into House Bill 346, the so-called Baby Olivia Act that has been up in our legislature, some discussion there. We'll be digging into a few other important pieces of legislation, possibly one of the House races, and we'll be covering all that and more today. But first, we're going to start off with covering House Bill 18's veto. The governor recently vetoed. I'll be digging into that, but if you want to learn more about the show, you want to follow along to old episodes, check out what we have going on, head on over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. And you can also reach out to the show. I've been getting a lot of emails from people, a lot of good information. We'll be covering some of that probably tomorrow, some things people have sent over to me that they want me to talk about. But if you've got something that you think is important, needs to be covered here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, which is the only conservative political show in Kentucky that covers the Kentucky politics specifically from a conservative point of view. It's the only one that has a daily show. And boy, we've been seeing a lot of growth too as well. A lot of people tuning in. So please, if you have anything you want to cover, you think of as interest, send me an email at info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. So House Bill 18, and to remind people what House Bill 18 does, we covered it ad nauseum on the show, digging into the different aspects of House Bill 18 and then as well as the Senate bill that is very similar to it. What it does is it stops these locales like Lexington and Louisville from mandating that property owners, landlords that own properties, have to take Section 8 housing vouchers and other federal government housing vouchers. So right now, some places like Lexington and Louisville have stated that you cannot deny a person access, quote unquote, to renting on your property based upon their source of income or source of payment of rent. So basically, if they're getting a voucher from the federal government, you can't say, nope, we don't want to deal with that. We don't want to take that. Now, obviously, this is a lot of problems. First, it's a huge property rights issue. That is somebody's owned property. You may say, hey, we want people to get housing and everything else, but at the end of the day, we do have property rights in this country, and a person should have the right to do with the property what they want to. Also, let's keep in mind that the Section 8 and other issues is a massive headache for landlords to deal with. There's a lot of inspections. There's a lot of issues with that. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. So that's a big issue. And let's go into, honestly, the quality of tenants. We don't have to have a gigantic discussion about this per se. I've talked about it, like I said, at length. But I mean, it's just a fact of the matter that when people aren't paying the rent themselves, they are less likely, and data plays this out, to take care of the property. And more importantly, even if, and this was an argument I had on Twitter, I had on social media, where somebody was like, just because they take Section 8 doesn't mean that, a Section 8 recipient is going to destroy the house. A person paying their rent through other means could also destroy the house, which is 100% accurate. But there's a basic thing you're missing. And that is that the person taking Section 8 has no money. So when you damage a home and you've rented a home, you've damaged it, they can keep your security deposit. Yeah. But what they can't do in a Section 8 situation is be able to recuperate any losses above that security deposit. So let's say the security deposit is 1 month's rent or even 2 months' rent. It's a $1,500-month property. And so you put down $3,000. It is really easy to rack up more than $3,000 worth of damages if somebody doesn't take care of the property. And you say, well, that's possible too for people who don't use Section 8. They can damage a property too. Absolutely they can, but here is the major difference. The fact that I have a job that pays me enough to afford the rent means when you take me to court, small claims court or otherwise, you sue me for the damages I've done to your property to recoup your losses, you have somebody you can go after that has money. When somebody has Section 8 housing voucher, it by definition means they don't have money. So if they damage your property, who are you going to sue? You can't get the money for the damage from the housing voucher system. They do not offer covering the damages of the property that these people have done. All you have is that initial deposit. And so what this means is that landlords, if they're forced to take Section 8, will have to charge massive deposits. And that means those people like me and you that maybe aren't on Section 8 but do rent properties, if you do rent a property and you're going to rent a place, well, we now would have to pay, if we're going to rent, a higher deposit because they have to make sure that the Section 8 people are paying higher deposits because they can't sue them if they damage a place. They could sue me. They could sue you. We've got money to give them, but they can't sue. What are you going to do? You can't get water from a rock. This person, by definition, has no money. That's why they're on Section 8. So first, that's just a sheer financial, straight up reason why a person paying the rent through Section 8 is a problem outside of all the other issues and perceived issues, possibly. It could be stereotypes, whatever you want to call it, that comes with Section 8 renters. And like I said, people who don't take care of the property, people who are not doing quite as general and proper behavior. I mean, unless you are going, generally speaking, to like college or trade school, because you can qualify for Section 8 there. Generally speaking, if you're qualifying for Section 8, there's something kind of going on here. Either you're like a single parent with a lot of kids, which once again, you're worried about destroying the house, or for some reason there isn't working going on, because when you look at the Section 8 guidelines to qualify, and then you take 2 adults in a household working, or even 1 adult in a household working, you know, it's a pretty low bar in order to qualify for Section 8 at this time. If you have a voucher, you've got to be making like basically nothing. And so that does bring into questions like, why is this person making nothing in a world where we've got 100 job openings for every 72 people looking for a job in Kentucky? So that just leads to questions. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your opinion is on Section 8. It doesn't matter what my opinion is on Section 8. This is somebody's private property, and these cities like Lexington, like Louisville, are telling them what they have to do with their private property, violating their property rights. So Governor Beshear vetoed this with a veto message, and I'm quoting now from his press release. He said, "We should be working to help our people. That is what my faith teaches me, to follow the parable of the Good Samaritan, to know that everyone is our neighbor and treat everyone with compassion. This bill is wrong and mean, and I'm proud to veto it." Now, here we see Beshear returning to this religious bucket, his Good Samaritan principle. We need to love everybody and treat everybody with compassion, unless, of course, those people we're treating with compassion and love is landlords. Right? Because I missed the part of the Bible, and you know what? If feel free to reach out to the show if you can find the line in the Bible that says that if your neighbor, if somebody isn't treating their neighbor properly enough, you can go ahead and use the power of government to confiscate their property and give it to those who, for whatever reason, you feel deserve it. Because that's what you're saying. It's not Beshear being the Good Samaritan to make sure everybody's treated with compassion with his property. No, he wants to take your property, your goods, your fruits of your labor, the thing that we have a God-given right to. He wants to take those away from you and give it to somebody else. That's not being a Good Samaritan. That's being a dictator. That's being a tyrant. That's being somebody who's stealing from people to give to somebody else. There's no compassion there. That's immoral. That's wrong. And if you believe in, like our founders did, that we all have God-given rights, which you should, there's no way you could claim that this is any way falls in line with the parable of the Good Samaritan in the Bible. There's no way. Well, coming up after this, we'll be digging into the baby Olivia bill, House Bill 346, had a hearing in committee on that. We'll be digging into that. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. There was a big to-do in a committee, House Committee, Health Services House Committee last week on House Bill 346, so-called the Baby Olivia Act. So what does it do? Well, what it does is it requires a video to be shown that demonstrates fetal development, and it requires high definition renderings and sonar images to be shown in grades 6 and up. Okay. Now there is nowhere where it says you have to specifically show a specific video. There is a video out there called the Baby Olivia video, and it does match the specifications of the video in the law, but there's no requirement in the law that you have to show the Baby Olivia video. On top of that, keep this in mind. You need to keep all this in mind as we discuss and hear what these people had to say. Parents can opt out of this video being shown to their kids, and they have to be alerted that this video will be shown and then have the opportunity to opt out. The schools they don't have to use the Baby Olivia video. They can choose any video they want that matches the specifications. Now, I will tell you this. I have seen the Baby Olivia video, and here's what I can tell you. It's a pretty standard, learning video. It doesn't reference anything about religion or God or anything like that. It simply goes through the developmental stages of a baby from conception through birth. And it shares factual things, like at the time of fertilization, an embryo already has distinct DNA and is a different human being with different traits already determined, such as hair, eye color, skin color, and as such is already determined. Now, it's already been determined at the time of conception. Now, this bill has gotten a lot of pushback from the pro-murderers out there in the world. And why is that? Well, it's a dirty little secret that when someone is factually informed and shown how babies develop in the womb with visuals, they are a whole lot less likely to view children as just a clump of cells in the womb that you can slaughter, which is what they want you to view them as. It's very hard to do that when you've seen it. And they simply can't have that. So the party of science, the party that, of course, attacked us all through COVID for being anti-science, I am the science, has now decided that we can't show factual things like a baby developing in the womb if the science goes against their narrative. Now, what are the arguments against showing this, though? What is the other side actually saying? And once again, let me go through what the bill's language actually says. Okay, so what the bill actually says, this is what they're fighting. Keep this in mind, because you're about to hear some testimonies that leave you asking a lot of questions about what are they talking about. So the bill says this: each school district shall adopt health curriculum for students in grade 6 or above that includes instruction on human growth and development. The instruction on human growth and development shall include a presentation of a high-definition ultrasound video, at least 3 minutes in duration, showing the development of the brain, heart, sex organs, and other vital organs in early fetal development, and B, an age-appropriate, high-quality, computer-generated rendering or animation showing the process of human cell fertilization and the stage of human development inside the uterus, noting specific markers in cell growth and organ development for the duration of pregnancy until birth. That is what the bill exactly says. That's what it exactly says, okay? I want to make sure you understand that, all right? Now, there is some language maybe in the Baby Olivia video itself that these murderers could have issues with. Obviously, they call Baby Olivia a she. They talk about it as a person, saying life begins at conception. But once again, remember, there is no requirement in the bill that the video the school district chooses actually has to say that. Even though it's factually true, the bill simply, once again, says that a video must be shown that meets the qualifications that I just read to you. It doesn't require any kind of conversation about when life begins at conception or so on and so forth. So, you may be wondering, why would somebody be against a scientifically accurate video on child development in the womb? Well, let's take a listen to what some of these people testifying this had to say. So this was the first guy to step up there and testify, and this is what he had to say.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Rob Matthew, and I am the parent of a daughter who went to public school at JCPS and is currently a senior at UK. It's for her that I'm here to speak out against House Bill 346 and the practice of using faith-based anti-abortion propaganda in our classrooms under the guise of sex and health education.
I'm going to stop the video right there because that was a father testifying, and it really doesn't matter what he has to say after this. I mean, I'll give you the cliff notes. What he says after this is that abortion is super great and that everybody should be able to murder babies whenever they want. And this video is no good, very bad, jerky thing because it might convince people not to do that. But you just heard him say faith-based propaganda. Okay? Once again, I read the bill to you. So you mean to tell me showing the developmental stages of a child in the womb is now somehow religious and faith-based propaganda? What, are you saying it's Christian propaganda that a baby develops in the womb? Is that where we're really at now? That literally, if you show a factual video of a baby developing in the womb, they'll say, oh, no. That's just religious propaganda. Remember, once again, the bill does not require you use baby Olivia. That video, it doesn't require it at all. It just requires high quality video showing the stages. There doesn't have to be religious talk about it. You don't got to talk about God. You don't got to talk about any of that. But yet he's testifying against a bill that doesn't even exist. That's what he's supposedly taking a stand against. Now, it wasn't only him who testified. No, we do have Planned Parenthood who took big issues with this bill. Now, you would think that Planned Parenthood wouldn't as much have an issue here because, you know, before I go through her comments, and I'm going to play this and stop it because she talks for like 2 or 3 minutes and I need to interject some information as we go. So I'm going to actually stop them as they go. But anyways, you would think this would be a great opportunity for Planned Parenthood and they shouldn't be complaining. Why? This gives them an opportunity to go ahead and produce their own video that districts like Lexington and Louisville and other liberal districts could decide to pick up and play instead of this video. As long as it meets the qualifications that's laid out in this law, they could decide to go ahead and show it. So they shouldn't be complaining. They should just be making their own video. But why can't they welcome this opportunity? Why aren't they taking it up on it? Because they can't pull it off. They cannot show accurate baby development in high quality and still win people over to the baby slaughter argument. So rather than saying, we'll just make our own video that goes ahead and follows the specifications of this bill, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to attack this bill. Because the very idea that students learn about child development would mean they don't go to our baby sacrificing clinics where we sacrifice children to the gods of self-satisfaction and self-importance, you know, that your life is the most important thing in the world. We can't, you know, sacrifice children to that God if they actually see a video. But let's listen to what she actually had to say here. Like I said, I'm going to be stopping this kind of as we go along.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Mosier and members of the committee. My name is Tamara Weeder. I am the Kentucky State Director with Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates, and I'm here today in strong opposition to House Bill 346. This bill is nothing but a deceitful move to force factually inaccurate anti-abortion propaganda into our secondary schools disguised as so-called health education. While this bill may not explicitly name the medically accurate Meet Baby Olivia video created by Live Action, House Bill 346 is clearly an attempt to compel showing this medically and scientifically inaccurate video or another like it in our schools.
So I'm going to stop her right there. So she even admits right off the bat, she goes, this is clearly trying to compel people to show this baby Olivia video, clearly trying to show it. And then even when she starts off, she states that while, yeah, the baby Olivia video isn't actually required, you know, the fact that it's even mentioned, the fact that this baby Olivia video happens to follow along with it means that it is somehow a part of this whole propaganda ring. And on top of that, she goes on to say that this, she misspoke there. I think she had a Freudian slip because first she said that the baby Olivia video was medically and scientifically inaccurate. And then she later on did say, you didn't mishear, she did say it was medically accurate. She did say that afterwards. I think she got got confused. Maybe she had a Freudian slip. But what is medically and unscientific about that video, the baby Olivia video? And once again, I encourage you, if you want to understand the video that they're talking about here, go out and Google it. It's just over 3 minutes long, and you can watch it and see what they're throwing such a big old fit about. But she does make these huge claims that this video is complete. It's medically inaccurate. It's ridiculous. But what were her claims? Well, we'll be covering that when we get back, because I think after this break, and we're coming up on a break, so I gotta pause for a second here. But I think when you hear her arguments and what she says, it's extreme for her to come out and say, this is propaganda, this isn't true. When you hear her arguments are not actually that the video is factually inaccurate. It just isn't showing enough of the facts for her to like, because she needs to find whatever excuse they need to find to make sure it's okay that they go ahead and slaughter babies in the womb. Because they can't. Because here's the thing. This is a cognitive dissonance issue with them. They can't say that these children are children in the womb, or else that would mean they're murdering children. So they've got to find every excuse they can to somehow say that the claim that these are children in the womb must be scientifically, medically wrong. But like I said, we'll be digging into what their reasoning was after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. If you want to reach out to the show, feel free to email info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. We'll be back here in a few short minutes. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Before the break, we were digging into the discussion on the so-called Baby Olivia Act, also known as House Bill 346. I went over what the bill says, but basically the bill is simply to require that public schools, grade 6 or higher, show at least a 3-minute long video that shows renderings, visual renderings, high definition renderings, as well as high definition, sonar pictures of ultrasound pictures, sorry, not sonar. I guess that is technically still sonar, but ultrasound pictures of children in the womb and then their developmental stages. That's all it requires. Nothing more, nothing less. It also allows parents to opt out. And we were listening to Planned Parenthood's testimony against this bill. And they started off by saying that this video is very 100% super duper, super duper inaccurate and all propaganda. Let's listen to why they say it's inaccurate.
In 3 short minutes, this video makes nearly a dozen false claims, including the assertion that life begins the moment of conception. Not only does scientific consensus clearly reject this, but it is also this misguided assertion that leads to horrifying rulings, like what we saw from the Alabama Supreme Court conferring personhood rights to embryos. The video further states that...
So her first issue, she says, is that the video, the Baby Olivia video, states that life begins at conception. She says this is mistaken, this is wrong. Now, I can make an argument as to why life begins at conception, and it is because at conception, the child has its own DNA. It is a distinct being in that way that that embryo does not have the same DNA as the parent, as the mother or the father. It has distinct DNA, distinct characteristics, distinct traits already determined by that. So I say conception, life begins at conception because that's when a distinct being with different DNA is created. Okay? Where do you think life begins and why? And nowhere does this Planned Parenthood person make that assertion. Keep in mind, Planned Parenthood says, so even if you're somebody listening to this, you say, well, maybe I think life begins when, a child can survive outside the womb. Maybe that's something you believe and think. To which I would ask you, one, there's a lot of medical technology that goes into how long a child can survive outside the womb. That will actually come up here in a second. So do you really want the definition of life to be determined based upon whether or not somebody, the medical advancements that is currently available to somebody? So what, you think it's scientific that life begins for like an American who has access to higher quality healthcare begins at a different point than life begins for, like, I don't know, an African child in, I don't know, the Congo? Are you racist or something? I mean, I'm just being honest here. Do you think that life begins at a different point due to a person's ability to have access to medical care? That doesn't make any sense. So, of course, life beginning when a child can survive outside the womb, that is so determinate based upon so many factors that there's no concrete point you could point to. And of course, though, that's not even what Planned Parenthood believes, because they believe in abortion up until the minute of birth. So unless you say that the birth canal, that point of birth, is somehow when life begins, when the child now emerges from the mother, I would ask you specifically why you believe that's the case. Some people will claim, well, it's because a child can now survive on its own. It doesn't, so on and so forth. Well, technically, once again, a child can survive outside the womb long before the moment it passes through the birth canal. That's one. And then two, if your definition is a child can survive on its own, a newborn baby can't survive on its own. A newborn baby can't feed itself. A newborn baby can't take care of itself. A newborn baby left there would die. So life can't start there at birth if you think it's because it can survive on its own. That's not where life would begin, though. You would say life doesn't begin until, what, a child's 6 or 7 years old? That's absolutely crazy. Also, on the scientific side of things, what do they do if they find a single-celled organism on another planet? Do they not say that that is life on another planet? But somehow, more than a single-celled organism inside a woman's body that has distinct and different DNA isn't life? That doesn't sound scientific either. But let's continue with her line of reasoning about why this is such a unscientific video.
That at 6 weeks, fetal brain activity can be recorded. The reality is scientific research clearly refutes that claim. The video also refers to a fetal heartbeat, which is not a medical term, but an emotionally charged term perpetuated by anti-abortion politicians.
Oh, so a fetal heartbeat in children in the womb, when you go in and, back in the day before baby murder was so incredibly important to the quote unquote scientific community, back in the day when, you went in at, 6 weeks, 8 weeks or whenever the heartbeat starts, it's right around there. When you went in and they did the ultrasound and they said, oh, look there, that's the baby's heartbeat. That's what they would say. They don't say, oh, that's just a sound. It sounds a lot like a heartbeat, yeah, but it's not a heart, we promise. No, forever they called that the baby heartbeat. But according to Planned Parenthood, well, that's a conspiracy. Baby heartbeats are a conspiracy, apparently. Those aren't real. Does it pump like a heart? Yeah. Does it sound like a heart? Yeah. Dude, have they called it heartbeats for years? Yeah. But actually, it's not a heartbeat. It's made up. That's a term. You all have made it up. Sure, ultrasound techs have been using the term forever, but you all have made it up. Let's continue.
Finally, at the end of the video, it claims that at 20 weeks, a fetus can survive outside of the womb. The facts are clear. Only 1 in 10 babies born at 22 weeks survive to go home. And that's...
Okay, so the video says a baby can survive outside the womb. And her refute is that only 1 in 10 babies can survive outside the womb. What's factually inaccurate about me saying that a child can survive outside the womb if a child 1 in 10 are surviving outside the womb? What's factually inaccurate about it? What's scientifically inaccurate about that? And then, as if she can't hear herself, this is what she says now. Absolutely ridiculous. This is what she says next.
It's only after months of intensive care. At 24 weeks, the likelihood of survival increases only to 68%.
At 24 weeks, the likelihood of survival only increases to 64%? So you mean to tell me, so even to her, when it's over a 50-50 shot that the kid can survive outside the womb and go on to live a pretty much normal life, above 68%, almost 70. That's a passing grade in school, by the way. That at that point even, you can't claim that a child can survive outside the womb. Well, you might as well then at that point say that a child can't survive outside the womb ever. Because where do you draw the line here? What if 99.9 or 99%, whatever the number is, of children born can survive outside the womb? But there is a very small percentage of children that are born at a full term that when they're born, they then unfortunately pass away. But according to Planned Parenthood, to claim that a child can survive outside the womb at 9 months would even be, according to them, according to their own logic that we just heard, factually inaccurate. Does that make any sense to anybody else? That would be factually inaccurate at that point? There's no, it only increases to 68% survival rate. And then says that, it seriously says that too. Like she thinks that's a good argument. And that's the kind of stat I would repeat to say that at 24 weeks, aborting a child is killing a human being for sure. That's something that people would say. Like, yeah, you're definitely killing a child. 24 weeks, they got a 68% chance to survive outside the womb. Yeah, you're killing a child. That would be an argument people would make on the other side. And yet she's making that argument to say, yeah, I mean, they're not even at a C rating yet. Okay, let's just murder them. There's no big deal here. And that's factually inaccurate. To say a child can survive outside the room, they only have a, 78% chance or 68% chance. That's factually inaccurate. What kind of nonsense is this? This is the twisting of science that we hear from them. I mean, literally twisting of science that we hear from them. And she continues on down this road. Because here's the thing. The real story is, once again, they can't make their own video. Because if they did, nobody would want to murder their children. Because they'd realize it's a different human being. Well, when we come back, we'll be talking about a few other pieces of legislation. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. We'll see you back here in a few short minutes. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Few other pieces of information I want to get to you in this final segment here. A few pieces of legislation worth mentioning first. And I mentioned this 6-7 months ago. So long time listeners, and by long time, I mean you've been listening at least 6 months. Well, remember, I've talked about how there will be a push for this, and that's a local option sales tax. And we see that in House Bill 14. It's an amendment to allow local option sales tax on for locales to charge a sales tax. And local option sales tax, right now, our Kentucky Constitution doesn't allow your locales, so your counties and your cities, to charge a sales tax on top of the state sales tax. And this does have ramifications where it's limited the ability for counties to pay their bills. And what do I mean by that? Well, right now, counties can really only charge a property tax, insurance tax. They can charge and then an occupational tax, which is basically an income tax. And so they can charge this income tax. And that means that in order to charge this income tax, though, it's based upon people working in the county. So when you have bedroom communities, and I would describe somewhere probably like Garrett County as sort of a bedroom community where while there's many jobs within Garrett County, you go outside of many people who live in Garrett County work in maybe Richmond or Nicholasville or Lexington. They work outside the county. And that means that those counties are collecting up their occupational tax off them working, which is the number one source for many counties to make ends meet. So they're collecting up the money from them there. And then those people, of course, they come back into Garrett County to live. And that's where they need most of their services, their roads and, utilities and police and fire and all the essential things of government. That's where they're getting it from. Schools, a lot of times they're getting it from that county, but that county is limited in their ability to pull in revenue because they can't, in a bedroom county, kind of like Garrett County, they can't pull in revenues, but they have these people they have to take care of. So local option sales tax would say, well, now you can pull money off people even living in the county. So that way, when they go shop and go to a restaurant or something, you can charge them sales tax. And it also means that, the way we have taxing set up now, that, tourism is a bad thing. It's not very good for you. Why? While tourism you'd think would be great, what ends up happening is that these tourism areas like Bardstown, tourism dollars, tourism brings in, retail jobs. It brings in a lot of times distillery jobs. Those can be pretty good because those are basically manufacturing jobs, but it brings in a lot of retail and a lot of restaurant jobs. The problem with retail and restaurant jobs is one, compared to a factory, the job to revenue ratio and income to revenue ratio is a lot less. For example, a restaurant doing $1 million a year employs a lot less people at a lot lower rate than a manufacturing facility doing $1 million a year in business. They're going to employ more people at a higher rate. And so tourism jobs aren't really desirable either, because you're bringing in all these people from out of town to put a stress on your utilities, and you got to provide them police and fire and all those things, while at the same time, you're not getting very high paying jobs for you to tax at a higher rate. And so this process has created a system where the state is redistributing wealth across the counties. And so what I would be in favor of, if I could wave a magic wand and change our tax code, this is what I would do. I would disallow income tax of any kind. So if I was to pass a tax amendment right now, I would say no income tax allowed of any kind at all in the state level or the county level. I then would have the state drop its sales tax down several percentages, and I would adopt a policy within the state that it won't be reshuffling around the wealth to help counties kind of make things work. But now, the flip side, you allow a local option sales tax. So we constitutionally take away the right to charge you an income tax. One, I think income tax is extremely immoral. And then two, you then allow these locales to charge a sales tax, but the state has lowered their sales tax down, and now these counties are able to stand on their own 2 feet, and they don't need the reshuffled in wealth from the state. So if I could wave a magic wand, that's what I would do. But that is not what the proponents of local option sales tax currently want. I know. I sat down with them when I was running for state treasurer, and I mentioned that. I said, if you want to get this amendment passed, and you would want people like me to support it, and you want the grassroots, the conservative grassroots to support it, then you need to add a ban on income tax of any kind in there. And you need to get the state to lower its sales tax. And I don't know if we can do that constitutionally to make sure that stays in place, but the state would need to lower their sales tax and stop redistributing wealth amongst counties. In that case, I'd support it, because it's basically saying, hey, look, every county can make their own decisions, and the people living in that county can decide. People with good taxation policies that strike that right balance between services and taxation would be rewarded with people staying there, growing communities, everything else. People who strike the wrong balance would be not rewarded with as many people living there. That makes sense, hopefully, to everybody listening. Like I said, you can disagree with me. Feel free to email me at info@theandrewshow.com. But I think I'm pretty clear. Get rid of income tax, replace it with a sales tax. Do that constitutionally. But that is not what they wanted to do. Instead, they told me that they want counties to have a menu of options to make it work and blah, 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 blah. They just want to add, on top of all the taxes you're paying now, they want to add sales tax. I don't want to increase the tax burden of anybody. I think we already pay too much. I want to say, if there's a better way to tax, where we're not sending money to the state, losing it in the administrative process, and then redistributing out wealth, but instead empowering counties to stand on their own 2 feet, so that way more dollars are going towards services and not towards the administrative overhead that comes with states redistributing the wealth, then you would actually think that that would be a good move. That's not what they want. They just want to tax you more. So keep your eyes out. I told you at the time, watch for these people. They're going to try to use things like, vote local, your local dollars should stay local, and yada, 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 to get you to say okay to you being taxed significantly more. Don't fall for it. That is my opinion. Don't fall for it. I also want to talk about another bill while we're on the subject, Senate Bill 295. It's a anti-vaccine mandate bill by Lindsay Tishner. The synopsis of it is it creates a new section of KRS Chapter 214 to prohibit a requirement for any individual to receive a COVID-19 vaccine, modified ribonucleic acid or an mRNA vaccine, or messenger ribonucleic mRNA vaccine for the purpose of student enrollment, employment, or medical treatment in the Commonwealth. So basically, it's a ban on COVID-19 vaccine mandates at any level. And this is a Senate Bill 295. And right now, as it sits, it has 19 co-sponsors, including members of leadership. Guys, that's enough co-sponsors that if it's brought to the floor now, it would pass. However, it probably won't pass. Because just because people have co-sponsored it doesn't mean anything. It means they're co-sponsoring because it's an election season, many of them. And they want to have a good election talking point. But what's that say? That they know something is so important with those who will vote on them, that sponsoring the bill is a good move for them politically, but they won't pass it. So it means that something that's really, really important to the citizens that elect them, they'll pretend to support, but they won't actually pass it because they don't actually support it. They're clearly not actually representing the people then. And that's just tell you guys, look, we are coming into election season. You're going to be seeing your reps, your state reps, and your state senators do a lot of things that they haven't done. If they're a state senator for the last 4 years, state house reps that they haven't done unless they've been challenged before. They're going to be doing a lot of things and sponsoring a lot of things to be able to pound their chest and claim that they did this and that. And when they say something like, well, I sponsored 295, that's a vaccine bill by Lindsay Tishner that would have banned COVID-19 vaccinations. I sponsored that for you. Ask them, why didn't it pass? It had 19 co-sponsors. Why did it not pass? Because when they say I co-sponsored it, and then you look at 19 co-sponsors and a bill doesn't pass the Senate, you better turn around and say, I think you're lying. I don't think you actually support that. I think you threw your name on it knowing it never moved forward, because why would a bill with 19 co-sponsors that's so important that you're going to campaign on it doesn't pass? Because you didn't want it to. You didn't push on it hard enough. You're a failure. You don't get to claim your failures as a success and a reason to vote for you. You failed. Oh, y'all, that's what we have time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. on WZXI, 1 o'clock everywhere else. Have a great rest of your day.